Warning against the worship of false gods, the Old Testament prophet Hosea predicted that those who sow the wind shall reap the whirlwind. In our number 3 story tonight, rich Republicans who won elections for decades by sowing the wind of religious conservatives today are reaping a whirlwind named Huckabee, and they do not appear to be happy about it. Governor Huckabee's rout last night opening a rift between religious Republicans and rich ones. Millionaire conservative patron Richard Viguerie last night called Huckabee's win bad news, labeling Huckabee a Christian socialist because his economic policies fall somewhere to the left of screw the poor. Viguerie wrote, quote, "In the 1970s, we conservatives had 2 legs on our stool, economic responsibility and a strong national defense, but that wasn't enough to win many elections. It wasn't until we added the 3rd leg to our stool, social issues, that conservatives were able to win elections consistently. Huckabee would saw off the economic leg." To prevent that, millionaire Rush Limbaugh attacked Huckabee's conservative credentials earlier this week, and Lil Limbaugh, David, addressed so-called conservative values and lumped Huckabee in among, quote, "those who don't fully understand them or who are committed to their defeat." Fixed News today came right out and said, "Did populism win and America lose in Iowa?" Non-millionaire Huckabee makes no secret of his opposition to the rich-wingers of his party, former pastor running an openly populist campaign that characterized his race as a chance for Main Street to triumph over Wall Street, even defending his spending as governor of Arkansas because it was working people who reaped that windfall. Let's turn now to Washington Post columnist E.J. Dionne, also a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution, joining us tonight from Manchester, New Hampshire. Good evening, E.J.
Good to be with you.
What if Huckabee wins the nomination or even just remains a leader, one of the leaders for the next month or two? Do we get a replay of '64 when the Republicans split between the conservative icon Barry Goldwater and the moderate Rockefeller Republicans when they booed Rocky at the convention?
Well, what you have now is a fight among perhaps 57 varieties of conservative. I think what you're seeing is a splintering of the conservative movement that Ronald Reagan pulled together, that George Bush held together for a while. But because of the failures in the Bush presidency and for other reasons, they're all flying apart. And I think your setup piece had it absolutely right. You've got in Mike Huckabee someone who does not fit the mold of what people expect of a Christian conservative who just falls into line with the Republican leadership on basic economic issues. And I think what you saw in Iowa were a lot of rank-and-file Christian conservatives rejecting the advice of national conservative Christian leaders who had played the old game with the Republican Party, people like Pat Robertson, who endorsed Giuliani. Instead, he had the grassroots group, people like the Organization of Homeschoolers. And it's a real problem for the Republicans. It's not clear to me that white evangelicals are suddenly going to veer to the left. But these are folks who have strong moral convictions, and for a lot of them, and Huckabee seems to be one of them, that includes caring about poor people.
Mr. Goldwater, who we invoked there, openly hated might be too strong a word, but he was not fond of the religious right. But Mr. Viguerie said conservatives have used them to win elections. Use might be the operative phrase there. Does the rich wing opposition to Huckabee bring us to a point where the religious right is no longer going to settle just for the election year lip service and demand something close to a theocratic party within the Republican framework or outside of it?
You know, I went to a lot of Huckabee rallies. I don't think the rank-and-file Christian conservatives are a lot more conservative than I am, for sure. But I don't think most of them are theocratic. But I do think that they look at these Republicans who have fought a lot harder for capital gains tax cuts and tax cuts on the inheritances of the wealthy than they have on a lot of their issues. I once debated a Christian right leader, and I said, you know, I'll defend your right to base your conclusions on your religious beliefs as long as you will show me where Jesus said we have to cut the capital gains tax. I've never been able to find that in the New Testament. And I think Huckabee is driving home this contradiction that's always existed within the conservative coalition, but has really come to the fore in this campaign.
George Bush and Karl Rove's GOP had argued that Jesus loved the free market. Huckabee Republicans clearly believe Jesus had this streak of socialism. Could this whiplash cleave religious voters away from the party entirely? Is that still a prospect out there, especially given Huckabee's lack of interest in the past hot-button issues like abortions and gay rights?
Well, Jesus did clear the money changers out of the temple, and that sounds an awful lot like Huckabee's Wall Street to Washington corridor that he talks about. I don't think white evangelicals are going to shift massively to the left. I do think there's a real ferment going on out there in the evangelical community. You have people like Rick Warren, one of the most popular leaders of the evangelical movement, who is talking a lot about AIDS in Africa and the importance of addressing, for Christians to address poverty. You have people like Rich Cizik at the National Association of Evangelicals, who says that stewardship of the earth, caring about the environment, is a biblical value, and so he's been in the forefront in talking about global warming. I think a lot of things are happening in that community, and that Mike Huckabee has become a visible symbol of that ferment.
E.J. Dionne of the Washington Post and the Brookings Institution. Thanks, E.J. Have a good weekend in Manchester.
It's great to be with you. Thanks, Keith.
Take care.